Okay, so let's start with a scenario. And it's a scenario that, on paper, should make absolutely zero sense.
Right.
You have a film, Wicked. It has just completely, decimated the global box office.
A monster.
A monster hit. It's a cultural phenomenon. And then you have the critical review. And I'm not just talking about fan accounts here. I mean the stuffy, highbrow critic. And they're calling the lead performances generational.
Powerhouse. I saw that word a lot.
Powerhouse. So by every single historical metric you could possibly use to predict the Academy Awards, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo were, well, they were locks.
It wasn't even a question. I mean, the conversation was supposed to be if they'd be competing against each other, not if they'd get in.
Exactly. It was a statistical inevitability.
Until it wasn't.
And then it wasn't. The envelope's open, the names are read out, and nothing. Just silence. A complete and total shutout for the two leads.
Which never happens. For a film this big, with this much acclaim for the acting, it's unheard of.
It is. And, usually when we do a postmortem on an Oscar snub, we can point to the math.
Yeah.
We can say, okay, well, the genre was too niche, or maybe the campaign just ran out of money.
Or the box office flopped, so the momentum died. You can always find a reason.
But none of those variables apply here. Wicked was a juggernaut in every sense of the word.
Which, when that happens, it creates a vacuum of explanation. When the data doesn't match the result, you have to start looking for the outlier variable.
Right.
And in this case, that outlier variable appears to be something incredibly subjective and, frankly, fascinatingly bizarre.
And that is our mission for this deep dive.
Right.
We are not looking at acting technique today. We're not going to break down their vocal ranges.
No.
We are analyzing a report from News Nation and a really, really sharp breakdown from the Pop Culture Crisis team that suggests the reason for this historic snub is entirely social.
It's all about the vibe.
All about the vibe. We're talking about a theory that these two massive stars were essentially blacklisted by voters, not because they lacked talent, but because they had maybe an excess of vibes, specifically creepy.
It's a true case study in how cringe can actually function as a And we're going to dissect the very blurred lines between, method acting and public performance. We'll explore the concept of kayfabe in marketing. And we also have to have a very serious, very nuanced conversation about the double Hollywood.
We absolutely do.
Because when you look at what kind of behavior gets punished versus what gets ignored or even rewarded, it tells you so much about the current moral or maybe amoral compass of the entire industry.
So let's get into the raw data. This is coming from News Nation, who managed to speak to actual anonymous academies.
Right.
And usually, when voters go anonymous, they're still pretty diplomatic. They'll say things like, oh, it was a very crowded year, or I just preferred another performance. It's all very polite, professional.
Standard industry talk.
That is not what happened here.
Not even close. The language they used was visceral. It was emotional.
Really?
The specific adjectives that were recorded in the report were intense, bizarre, and creepy. Yeah. And one voter explicitly told the reporter that the dynamic between Grande and Erivo was overly close, and it got to a point where it became genuinely repulsive.
See, I want to stick on that word creepy for just a second.
Yeah.
That is such a heavy designation for a friendship.
It is.
We see best friends in Hollywood all the time. I mean, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, they built an entire brand, a whole production company on being best friends.
Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. It's a selling point.
It's a huge selling point, normally. So why did this specific dynamic trigger a creepy radar for these voters? What was so different?
I think it comes down to the architecture of the relationship as it was presented to the public. Healthy friendships, even really, really close ones, they usually feel inclusive. If you see two friends laughing at a party, you kind of feel like you can walk up and join the joke, Yeah. But what the voters described here was a closed and impenetrable. The report highlights this perception of constant guardianship. Voters described a visual dynamic on the entire press tour where Cynthia Erivo was essentially acting as a parent or a shield or a caretaker for Ariana Grande.
Oh, wait.
We're talking constant fondling, sobbing in public spaces, holding hands with a grip that, to some, looked desperate. Sources literally described it as watching trauma bonding happen in real time right in front of the photographer.
So it creates a barrier. If I'm a voter and I'm watching this play out, I don't feel like I'm watching two professionals who are excited to promote their film.
No.
I feel like I'm intruding on a therapy.
Precisely. It turns the entire audience into voyeurs rather than participants. And, there was one quote from a source that I think really anchors this entire narrative.
Yeah.
It's shocking, but it explains that ick factor perfectly.
What was it?
The source said the bond felt emotionally incestuous. question.
Wow. Okay, that is a jarring term to throw around about two co-stars.
It is a very jarring term. And we need to be very clear. The source was quick to emphasize there's obviously no blood relation, no marriage here. That's not what they meant.
Right.
But emotional incest in a psychological context, and just in the colloquial way this voter obvious, it refers to a collapse of individual identity. It felt like they were witnessing this impenetrable wall of where the boundaries between the two people had, and that sort of thing doesn't belong on a professional press tour. It made the voters feel really uncomfortable, like they were witnessing something deeply private and frankly unresolved.
It's the difference between chemistry and codependency.
That's it, exactly.
And the thing is, this wasn't just some general vibe that people were picking up on. This wasn't just, oh, look, they hold hands a lot.
No, it was specific.
There were very specific viral incidents that cemented this narrative. And we have to talk about the injured dog moment, because I think this is the one that really turned the tide for a lot of people.
The incident with the producer, Mark Platt, this is a prime example of that guardianship dynamic in action.
So let's set the scene. You've got Mark Platt, a legendary producer. Arguably one of the most powerful men in that room.
For sure.
He's sitting next to Ariana Grande at some panel discussion. The energy is high. Everyone's excited about the project. He reaches over and he grabs Ariana's arm to shake it. You know, that classic, yes, we did it kind of gesture.
Just a normal camaraderie shake, a completely standard, non-threatening gesture of enthusiasm between colleagues.
Right. But Ariana's reaction, it wasn't to shake back. She recoiled. She physically pulled her arm into her chest, like curled inward. And the source material describes her looking like an injured dog. And then, and this is the part that just baffled people, she verbalizes it. She actually says out loud into a hot microphone, "Oh, I'm just a little baby and you hurt my arm."
Okay, let's just pause and unpack the psychology of that one sentence. I'm just a little baby.
Right.
We are talking about a woman in a global pop icon, a business goal, and she is actively campaigning for the highest honor in her profession, an award that signifies you are a master of your craft.
Yes.
And in a moment of professional interaction, her go-to response is extreme infantilization.
It just completely destroys that image of the serious actress she's trying to build. But what made it creepy to the voters wasn't just Ariana's reaction. It was what happened like 3 seconds later.
Cynthia Erivo's intervention.
Yes.
She didn't laugh it off. She didn't look at Mark Platt and joke, easy there, Hulk.
Which is what a normal person would do.
Right. She swooped in. She physically started cradling the arm that Platt had touched. She rested her head on it. She treated a completely harmless social gesture like it was a physical assault that required immediate emotional triage.
And what that does is it signals to the entire room, to every voter watching, my co-star is fragile. She is broken, and I am the only thing keeping her together.
And that is exhausting for an Academy voter. You have to remember the demographic here.
Yeah.
These are older industry veterans. They have survived decades in a brutal, cutthroat business. They respect grit. They respect resilience.
Of course.
So when they see two adults engaging in what looks like a mother-toddler role play in the middle of a high-stakes press junket, it doesn't read as method acting.
No.
It reads as instability. It reads as a liability.
And it also raises the big question of authenticity. Was that even real, or was it all just a performance? Because there was another moment, the whole aura reading thing in Paris, that makes you wonder if they were just trying to out-deep each other and they got lost in the sauce.
Oh, the Paris premiere. This is where the metaphysical aspect of it all comes in, and it's where the cringe really, really hits.
So an interviewer asks a pretty standard fluff question, right? Describe each other's auras.
Total softball.
It's a softball. You're just supposed to say, oh, she's bright and happy. Something simple. So Ariana goes first, and she says Cynthia is yellow like sunshine and purple.
Which, on its face, seems fine. It's a color, it's poetic, whatever.
Right, until you see the panic just wash over her face. Ariana realizes that Cynthia Erivo starred in the color purple.
Oh, no.
And she suddenly spirals. She thinks she's committed this grave sin of reducing Cynthia to her resume. She starts freaking out, saying, did I just say that? Did I just reference her resume? It was this moment of just frantic hyper-awareness, like she was walking on eggshells around her own best friend.
Which just shows a total lack of ease. It's not comfortable.
Not at all.
But then Cynthia answers, and she takes it in a completely different direction. She goes full Shakespeare. She describes Ariana not just as blue, but as seal blue like aqua and sunset orange.
Veal blue. Who says that? It's so specific. It's so curated.
It's performative depth that feels rehearsed. And the reaction from the public and apparently from the voters was just this collective sigh of, oh, I can't go through this again. Yes.
It's the fatigue of watching people try to manufacture a spiritual connection for a marketing side. It feels like you're trapped in a room with a couple that's been dating for 2 weeks and is absolutely convinced they invented the concept of love.
That is the perfect analogy. It's that new relationship energy that nobody else wants to be around because it just sucks all the oxygen out of the room. But, there is a darker side, this guardianship dynamic that we need to touch on, because it wasn't just protecting Ariana from producers shaking her arm. It was protecting her from, everything.
Right.
The New York City premiere is a great example.
And this is where the narrative really starts to shift from just weird to something more like controlling or even smothering.
So Ariana's on the red carpet. Photographers are yelling. Now, let's be fair. Red carpets are chaotic.
They're awful.
They're loud. They're stressful. But it's also, it's the job. And Ariana gets visibly overwhelmed. Lip readers apparently caught her turning to Cynthia and saying something to the effect of, if you could, my anxiety. And Cynthia just activates immediately.
Oh, he's still in.
She's flagging down staff. She's blocking camera angles. She is literally acting as the human shield. And look, on a basic human level, helping a friend who has anxiety is a good thing. We all want friends who support us.
Of course.
But we are analyzing this through the lens of a voter, through the lens of the industry. And one voter's critique on this was just devastating. They said, we were protecting Ariana from her anxiety and Cynthia from having to intervene again.
Well, that implies the voters felt held hostage by it.
Exactly.
They couldn't just watch the movie or enjoy the interview. They felt like they had to actively manage the emotional volatility of the talent. It becomes a burden.
It changes the power dynamic completely. Instead of, here are two powerful actresses at the absolute top of their game, the narrative becomes, here is a fragile star and her handler.
Right. It diminishes both of them.
Totally. And then you have the Singapore incident where that fan or that serial offender ran up to them.
Yeah, that's a security issue, plain and simple. A guy runs up, he rushes them. That's a scary situation.
It is scary, but again, Cynthia rushes in to physically defend Ariana. And the source commentary on this was so biting because it really pointed out the absurdity of the optics. They noted that if this guy was an act threat, like a real danger to society, what exactly is Cynthia Erivo going to do about it?
The source joked she could stab him with her nails.
Exactly. It just highlights the performative nature of the protection. It feels like theater. It's a show of I am the protector, and it reinforces that us against the world mentality that eventually alienated everyone else in the world part of that equation.
There is one piece of evidence about this obsession that I hadn't even heard before reading this report, and it honestly blew my mind. It moves the needle from just codependency into full-on fixation.
Oh, yeah.
We have to talk about the memo.
This is the smoke. For the people who think this was all calculated or maybe even pathological.
So, during an interview for Wicked, the topic of Cynthia's memoir comes up. And Ariana Grande doesn't just compliment it. She doesn't just say, oh, I read it, it's beautiful.
No.
She starts quoting it verbatim from memory.
Which is not a normal thing to do.
It's so strange. I mean, I've read my best friend's work. I love my best friend's work. I cannot recite it like I'm performing a monologue in some black box theater.
No, because that requires study. It requires rehearsal. When you quote a book word for word in what's supposed to be a casual conversation, it signals that you have prepared for this moment.
Right.
It stops feeling like a friendship and it starts feeling like homework, or, as some of the sources suggested, a script. It suggests a level of fixation that just goes way beyond normal chemistry.
Which leads us to the big theory, the why. Why do all this? Why act this way if you know it's so off-putting? Why alienate the very people who hold your Oscar fate in their hand? And the theory is that this was all a high-stakes gamble on something we could call method marketing.
And to understand that, we need to talk about kayfabe.
Okay, yes. Please, for any listener who doesn't watch professional wrestling, break down what kayfabe is.
So kayfabe is a wrestling term. It basically refers to the portrayal of staged events as if they are reality. In the old days of the WWE or the WWF back then, if you were a heel, bad guy, you stayed a bad guy 24 hours a day.
Live the gimmick.
You lived the gimmick. You didn't sign autographs for kids at the airport. You spat on the ground and walked away. You protected the business by living the lie. You never, ever broke character.
And the source here is arguing that Ariana and Cynthia were attempting a modern form of kayfabe.
That's the theory.
They wanted us to believe that they are Glinda and Elphaba, that the incredible bond we see on screen, which is central to the movie's plot, is 100% real off-screen, that they've been fundamentally changed by this experience and by each other.
The problem is, as the source so perfectly notes, kayfabe is dead. We have social media. We have behind-the-scenes access. We know who they are outside of their roles. We know they are actors. And so when you try to maintain that level of illusion in, the 2020s, this idea that we are soulmates bound by cosmic destiny, it doesn't create mystique anymore.
It just creates cringe.
Cringe. It feels like you're cosplaying a friendship.
It's so interesting because there is a version of kayfabe that still works incredibly well in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
The feud.
The conflict always sells better than harmony.
Always. Look at the marketing. For Anyone But You with Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell, they lean so hard into that. Do they love each other? Do they hate each other? Are they secretly cheating narrative?
Or the Don't Worry Darling press tour.
Right.
Spitgate.
Oh my God, yes. People were dissecting every single glance between Florence Pugh and Olivia Wilde.
Yeah.
People love to speculate about hatred, or at least tension.
The showman thing is a lot less interesting than trying to make people think hate each other. That's the direct quote from the analysis.
And it's true.
It is, because hate allows the audience to take a side. It engages you. It makes you ask, are you Team Florence or are you Team Olivia? But with Ariana and Cynthia, the narrative was just, we're a closed circle.
Right. No entry.
There's no room for the audience in that circle. The message was, we love each other so much that nobody else matters. Well, if nobody else matters, why should the voters care about it?
It just pushes people away. So they bet on love, they bet on this method friendship, and they lost big time. But, and this is the really important pivot we have to make now, does the punishment actually fit the crime here?
Mm-hmm.
Because being annoying isn't illegal. Being cringe isn't a felony.
And this is where the conversation turns to the sociology of the industry. We have to address the misogynoir argument that has completely exploded on social media.
Right. There's a massive defense on Twitter and on TikTok that says, essentially, all Cynthia Erivo did was be a black woman who loves her friend.
And that if this was two white men, the reaction would be totally different.
The argument is that if two white men, let's say Brad Pitt and George Clooney, were constantly hugging and defending each other on a press tour, would we call it creep or would we call it a charming bromance?
Which is a valid control group to consider. We do glorify the bromance. We love seeing men be affectionate because it kind of defies the old stereotype of toxic masculinity.
Or I do.
However, the source material does push back. They argue that the specific behaviors we saw here, the baby talk, the injured dog routine, the snatching of water bottles to open them for another capable adult, that stuff would be weird regardless of gender or race.
That's a fair point.
If Brad Pitt started crying and resting his head on George Clooney's arm because a producer shook his hand too hard, the industry would absolutely be asking, is he okay? Is he having some kind of breakdown?
So it's not just the affection itself, it's the nature of the affection, it's the performance of fragility.
Exact. But the double standard is undeniably glaring. And to see that, we have to talk about the Safdie brothers. This comparison is the most damning part of the entire...
This absolutely blew my mind. So for context, Josh and Benny Safdie are these indie darlings. They made Uncut Gems. Good time.
Very celebrated.
Very celebrated. Josh Safdie has a new film, Marty Supreme, that is looking at potentially 9 Oscar nominations. The industry loves them.
Adores them. And now let's look at their resume of vibe. We aren't talking about holding hands too much on a red carpet.
No.
We are talking about serious public controversy. The analysis points to allegations regarding the oversight of a minor sex scene in the film Good Time back in 2017.
Which is a massive, massive ethical issue.
We are talking about their practice of hiring ex-convicts on their film sets, which raises legitimate safety issues for the rest of the cast and crew. We're talking about allegations regarding a director inviting a 17-year-old from Instagram to a film set. I mean, these are serious issues involving power dynamics, safety, and potentially the law. These are dark issues.
And yet, are they being blacklisted?
Not at all. The Academy seems perfectly capable of separating the art from the artist in their case. They say, well, the movie is good, the direction is gritty and authentic, so we will just ignore the messy reality director.
So they get nominated, they get celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
But for Ariana and Cynthia, their messy reality is what? They care about each other too much, they're annoying, they cry in public.
And that is the fundamental discrepancy. The Academy seems more than willing to tolerate darkness if it comes with the cool label of genius or auteur.
But they have zero tolerance for cringe.
Zero.
It really suggests that the worst thing you can possibly be in Hollywood isn't problematic, it's uncool.
Precise. The Safdie brothers fit a certain archetype of the gritty, dangerous male artist. And that is cool to a lot of voters. It feels edgy, it feels authentic in a way they respect. Ariana and Cynthia, with the aura readings and the baby talk, they fit the archetype of the theater. And the cool kids in the Academy cafeteria do not want to sit.
It's just high school politics with million-dollar stakes.
It really is. The voters are essentially sending a message. We can look past serious, ethical gray areas, but for the love of God, do not make us feel awkward during a luncheon. The ick factor is a more powerful deterrent than the morality factor.
That is. It's bleak, but it feels incredibly accurate. Okay. It seems like the industry has a much higher tolerance for actual potential danger than it does for social awkwardness.
It's all about comfort. The Safdie's controversies are abstract to most voters. They happen over there on a film set years ago. But Ariana and Cynthia's behavior happens to the voters. It happens in the room with them.
That's a great point.
It makes the handshake awkward. It makes the interview weird. And that visceral, immediate discomfort is what ends up driving the vote.
So if you are a PR strategist listening to this right now, or maybe a young actor hoping to win an Oscar one day, what is the big lesson here?
I mean, the lesson is that the performance of the press tour is now just as critical, if not more critical, than the performance in the actual film.
Wow.
You cannot just be a great actor anymore. You have to be the right kind of, you have to be authentic, but not too authentic. You have to be close to your co-star, but you can't be codependent. You have to be relatable, but you must maintain the mystique of a movie.
It's an impossible tightrope to walk. You have to be vulnerable enough to seem human, but poised enough to seem capable. And if you fall off that tightrope into the cringe safety net,
the Academy will leave you there.
Yeah.
They will. They'll just view your whole campaign as a nuisance. And as we saw with Wicked, they will literally vote for someone else simply to make the weirdness. They voted for a cleaner, easier narrative.
It's incredible. We started this deep dive thinking we were talking about acting snub, and we've ended up dissecting the moral compass, or maybe the lack thereof, of an entire industry.
Which, as it turns out, points sharply away from awkwardness, not away from actual bad behavior. It prioritizes the comfort of the voter far above the merit of...
So here's the thought I want to leave you with today. If the Oscars are supposed to be the gold standard of artistic merit, the single award, judging the absolute best performances of the year, why do we allow a bad press tour to completely negate a great performance? Are we actually judging art anymore? Or were we judging vibes? And if we were just judging vibes, why is the bad boy energy so often rewarded while the theater kid energy is so harshly punished?
It's a question that I'm sure Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo are asking themselves right now. And frankly, it's a question the Academy should probably be asking themselves too.
Something to mull over next time you scroll past a red carpet photo. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.